Welcome to SatusCam 2. Let's talk about the SatusCam. So, what is a SatusCam, you might ask? Well, it's the camera we designed for the game Satus. Now, if you're not familiar, Satus is a colony management game that's in early stages of development right now. It's prior to the alpha, so there's a lot of work to be done. But as you can see in the background, there is a lot of work already done on the terrain generation. So now we're working on the camera aspect. Let's take a quick look at the camera diagram before we actually jump into seeing it in action. So here there are two main components. There is the camera and the focal point. The focal point is the point on the map that the camera is always going to be facing. So it's going to generally be a point on the terrain that changes as you move the camera. The focal point is tied to the translate functions that it typically uses the WSAD inputs. Now let's see this in action. In this video, you can see the camera moving in each of the cardinal directions. The camera does move up and down the terrain, so the elevation does change as you move the camera in each direction. Also, as you move diagonally, the camera maintains its speed, so we do account for the hypotenuse effect if you go in two directions at once. The main thing to notice here is that the camera does move up and down the terrain. Now, additionally to the translate functions, we also have the rotate, which is typically tied to the right mouse button, and that's the case in the SatusCam 2. And when the system rotates, it rotates the camera around the central focal point. In this clip, as you see the camera rotate, it does adjust for the height of the terrain as it rotates around the central point of the valley. So that is important as you rotate around certain features that it doesn't clip into the surrounding terrain. And as you go towards higher hills, it does adjust the elevation accordingly. Now there was multiple ways we could approach the zoom. And what we decided to do is to zoom along the focal length between the camera and the focal point. So it zooms directly in towards the point the camera is facing. Alternatively, we could have zoomed up and down or towards the camera in the horizontal direction. But after trial and error, it just didn't look right. So we decided to zoom along that hypotenuse between the camera and the focal point. So you can see in action here as you zoom in and out of the terrain, it's not as smooth as we want it to be, and that's something that we'll tune up as we go forward towards alpha. And as you can see, you can rotate it as you zoom in, and as you rotate, it does account for elevation. So this last feature is tilt, and it's handled by the control right mouse button. And this the feature that gives you this high and low angles allows you to see the uppermost and lowestmost elevations. So here you see it in action. Immediately it goes down to the lowest level and bottoms out so it doesn't clip into the ground, so it's smart and knows where the elevation is. You can even rotate the camera, and regardless of the tilt, it follows the contour of the map, so it does check the elevation to make sure that it doesn't clip into the ground. So let's put all these features together. The toughest environment for the camera is going to be the center of the map, where the highest elevations are located. Here, as the camera rotates around this hill, it gets adjusted by the elevation of the nearby mountain. There's still some clipping here due to the way we apply the smoothing function of the height correction, but overall the camera seems to keep the clipping to a minimum. So here we continue to adjust the tilt and rotate, and if you adjust the tilt high enough, you can actually see up into the sky in the top of the mountain, something you can't typically do with RTS style cameras. And using the combination of tilt, zoom, and the height correction of the elevation, you can get some pretty spectacular views of the side of the mountains and up into the top of the mountains. You can still get too close to vertical surfaces and start clipping into the side, but again, the camera quickly corrects for this and tries its best to stay outside of any terrain. Throughout this recording, you may notice that little tiny ball at the center of the screen that pops in and out of the train every now and then. That's just the visualization of the focal point, and is just there for debugging purposes. Now this camera is not perfect. There's things that we want to work on and continue to improve as we move forward, but it gives us the flexibility to start working on other architecture inside the game, to start focusing on other core mechanics and game components other than just the terrain and the way we visualize the terrain, which is the camera. And whereas most strategy games and survival games tend to lock you into one particular camera angle or view location, we want to make the world feel as open as possible. And that's one of the reasons we're focusing so much on the terrain generation on a large world scale like this, and also the way we view that. We're hoping that by focusing on these tools early, will enable the community to put together some pretty epic builds. So that's all we have to share for now, and we will continue to update the community as we continue to develop the game. Thanks for watching!